everyone, this is Elizabeth from the Community Library. Today I'm just going to be talking about a few books I'd like to recommend for November, which it happens to be National Adoption Awareness Month. So as you might know, November is National Adoption Awareness Month. It's a month that was started in order to celebrate the families that were formed by adoption, as well as to bring awareness to children in foster care that are waiting for families. And it's kind of adapted to bring awareness to issues relating to adoption. So the books specifically that I'm going to talk about are focused on one aspect of adoption, which is the stories and experiences of people who were adopted, who are sometimes also known as adoptees. So the thing I think that's really important is that when adoptees are given space to tell their story and people listen, it can be really powerful and a rewarding experience to read. So the books that I'm going to talk about, there's adult books, young adult books for teens, as well as a children's book. I really encourage people of all ages to read or listen to them. Throughout all the books, there's common experiences that anyone can really relate to, like finding your roots and bonding with family. So the first book I want to talk about is a book called All You Can Ever Know by Nicole Chung. So this is a memoir about Chung's experience being adopted into a white family in a small town in Oregon. Growing up, she was the only Korean person she knew, and she had been told the common story that her birth mother had wanted her to have a better life, so that's why she was given up for adoption. But when she became pregnant with her own child, all the unknowns, then the questions that she had thought about growing up became important to know, both medically and for her own sake, knowing her story. So as she begins her search for answers about her birth family, she unearths the truth, which might be different from the story that she had been told growing up. This memoir is really heart-wrenching, but it's hopeful at the same time. It also talks about hard to hear issues like the challenges of transracial adoption, considering language and differences in culture. I feel when I was reading it, it was really immensely rewarding to read about her path, growing to find her family and becoming connected with her Korean family. So the next book, called Hey Kiddo, is actually a memoir in the form of a graphic novel. So as you can see here, there's a panel of what the drawings look like, and it's in the form of a comic. So growing up, Jarrett was raised by his grandparents. His mother was an addict and was kind of in and out of his life, and he didn't even know who his father was. And as he was a kid, he was able to cope with the struggles of his non-traditional family through drawing and art. And then as he grows into adolescence, he's finally able to cope with his mother's addiction and begin the search for answers about his father. So this isn't strictly adoption, but it's definitely relatable in the terms of Jared's honesty and the intimacy portrayed when he talks about his childhood. And it's oftentimes a sad story as he talks about his mother's abandonment and addiction. But similarly to All You Can Ever Know, there's a hope throughout in the power of family and art to help someone cope with difficult times. So if you're not someone who usually reads graphic novels, I would recommend giving this one a shot. The illustrations, as you can see, are realistic and straightforward, but that also makes them easy to relate to. And something interesting about this one too is there's also an audiobook available. It's available on both Hoopla and Overdrive if you're interested, if you wanted to read this one but aren't sure about the graphic novel format. So the next book is a young adult book called Solo by Kwame Alexander with Mary Rand Hess. And you may have heard of Kwame Alexander before, as he's well known for writing really highly regarded books in verse or in poetry. So in Solo, he uses it to tell the story of 17-year-old Blade, who is the son of a washed-up, drug-addicted former rock star. So Blade's just about to head off to college, but he can't seem to escape the stain of his father's reputation on his life, or his mother's death, which haunts him 10 years later. after his father crashes his graduation ceremony where he was giving the valedictorian speech, and his older sister reveals a long kept family secret. Blade sets out on a journey of self discovery and is looking for a new way to define his family. I really recommend this book for music lovers, as you can kind of see from the cover. There are a lot of references to Lenny Kravitz, to Metallica, and music is really a central focus on how Blade expresses himself and how he connects with his family. And also, kind of related to that, I also really recommend the audiobook version of this book. One, it helps with reading books in verse. If you're not comfortable reading poetry, I find that it really helps me to be able to understand the story. And also with this one, there's moments in the audiobook where they actually play the song. So you'll hear the instrumental and singing of the chapter, which I thought was really interesting. And so the last book I wanted to talk about is called For Black Girls Like Me by Mariama J. Lockington. So this is a middle grade or children's book about a girl named Kiddo who was 11 years old and was adopted into a white family when she was a baby. Even though she loves her family a lot, she often wonders and dreams about what would it be like to grow up in a family where everyone looks like her. So when her family moves from Maryland to New Mexico, all the changes in her life, like losing her best friend, her sister being too cool to hang out with her, and having a hard time finding friends at school, make it hard for her to adjust. And then this one is actually told through a mix of prose, text, and letters. And it's very lyrical and touching, and it really focuses on the bond between sisters and family, as well as learning to be an independent person, as well as still being a part of her family. So I wanted to thank you for checking out this video. Thanks.